Yeah, that's too much.
Speaking of sex on a kick-go machine, let's talk Cavs.
Is our guest
Perfect
ready?
transition.
We do. Rafael Barlowe, Locked On Network's NBA draft expert,
Nice.
is now joining us from Dallas, Texas.
Hey,
What's up,
thanks for
Rafael?
coming, Raphael.
Rafael, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. Thanks
Yeah,
for,
no,
thank
thanks
you so
for
much.
coming on. We've got a million questions. First and foremost, who are the Cavs going to draft?
I wish I knew exactly, but I think Ohio's own Malaki Branham would be a good fit. I think he's someone that they should consider. I think someone that they will consider.
We hope so. We've heard that name a lot.
Yeah.
Why is he a good fit for the Cavs?
Well, I mean, one, I think he's young and fits their timeline. You look at Cleveland, this is a playoff team, essentially a playoff team with a lottery pick. And Branham has the potential to be a three-level scorer. He actually kind of reminds me of Chris Middleton. Kind of has like this old school, old man game, but it is very efficient, gets to his spots. And if he can develop as a three-point shooter, now I know he shot 41% from three as a freshman, but it was on a low volume of attempts. But if he can become a reliable three-point shooter, he gives the Cavs some of the spacing that they really need.
They do need that space.
It is so hard nowadays. I know it's not that new at this point, but like the fact that most of the good players are freshmen, generally, it makes it so much harder to draft. I think about like when I was a kid, even into the 90s, like even the great players, the Birds, the Magics, the Michaels, they would all play at least 3 years in college back in those days, with very rare exceptions. And now that's just like never happens. This is quite a challenge for NBA scouts, don't you think? And guys like you that study this to like judge how good a 17, 18, or 19-year-old is going to be playing against men.
Yeah, and I think you also have to factor off the court. I mean, think about when we were 17 or 18 or 19 years old, how we would react if we had $10-20 million guaranteed in our bank accounts. So I think that
have ended well.
That is a factor. Yeah, and why some guys make it and don't make it. Sometimes it's not talent; it's just maturity. But yeah, I think it's definitely tougher, and it puts all the pressure on the teams. But as long as the teams keep drafting guys that are 18 or 19 years old, then it's not going to change.
We're looking at your mock. It's funny, 20 years ago, you talk about Change Bowl. You could talk to casual basketball fans, and they'd tell you who the top 10 were. Maybe not the order that they were going to go, but you knew all the guys that were going to go.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at these guys going,
I never heard of any of these guys, to be totally honest.
I don't know them.
I don't know any of them.
They're coming from areas we don't even know. So I imagine trying to follow this as you do has to be absolutely maddening.
I mean, you really have to start in high school. You have to start sometimes as early as 16 years old. I mean, I think you can blame LeBron James for that. Not saying that he was the first guy that people followed as a teenager, but he was someone that kind of had a big reputation and had a brand at an early age. And I think now you see that more often, and you don't really see like the stars in college. Like, for example, Drew Timme is probably one of the most recognizable college names, but he's not in this draft. And the longer you stay in college, it's almost like the more it hurts your draft stock because they think something's wrong with you.
Wow.
When you look at this draft, last year, when Evan Mobley came out, people were telling me you got Jalen Suggs, you got Mobley, you take a look at the guys, Cade Cunningham, Barnes. You had 5 names of guys who people thought were game changers and people that could potentially be, just generational type guys. We end up getting Mobley at I believe number 3. We get Mobley at 3, and it looks like he's the next coming of I don't know whether it's Kevin Durant or not Durant, but Duncan or Kevin Garnett. Is there any type players in the top 10 that are going to be generation type players, guys that are going to be superstars, bona fide superstars, or is this just a draft class where it's just a bunch of decent, maybe all-star guys potentially as they get older?
I honestly think that Jaden Ivey has superstar potential. I also feel like Paolo Banchero has superstar potential. I think there's going to be some really, really good players. There's a kid, Shaedon Sharpe. He's the biggest mystery in the draft. He didn't play at Kentucky. He's basically come high school, kind of found a loophole in the system to make sure that he's eligible for the. No, he's from Canada.
Oh, okay.
He's from Canada. Yep. He started off playing. He was the number 1 player in the high school class of 2022. Somehow he was eligible for the draft, and he went to Kentucky for a semester but didn't play. And right now I have him at number 11. Most people think he's one of the most talented players in the draft, but he could fall to where I have him going simply because there's such a small sample size. But nobody questions his talent. It's such a risky choice because he didn't play college basketball.
Well, if he goes to the Knicks, he's going to suck because every player they draft sucks.
Assuming that the Cavs are going to stick with Colin Sexton, do you think that first of all, would you stick with Colin Sexton, or would you try and trade him? And do you think that his presence will influence who they will pick in the draft?
I like Colin Sexton. I really do. I like him because, one, he just has this elite level self-confidence. And I think sometimes the confidence that he has in himself leads to the questionable shot selection or whatever. But I think that Sexton could have value if you bring him in as a six-man, kind of the Jason Terry, Lou Williams type role. Maybe, I don't know him, obviously, but maybe like if with a bigger contract, with a second contract, it makes him more likely to accept that role. Mm-hmm. But from his standpoint, I can understand why he may say like, no, I'm the starter. I deserve to start. But to me, I wouldn't focus on starting. I'd focus on finishing. And I think if you get a guy in the starting lineup that has some size that can knock down open shots, it will make the starting lineup better. And then you can have a dynamic scorer off the bench in Colin Sexton. So I think it all depends on if he wants to accept the six-man role.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if he does that. So the international influx of players also makes all this difficult to follow because we don't know where, some of these kids are coming from foreign countries, 17, 18 years old. We've seen tape on most of them, but outside of that, we don't know.
Like a shaky VHS camera from Lithuania.
Right, and we don't know, is that a real video?
Right,
Is it Adam Sandler bringing in a kid? Did anybody see the movie, the Adam Sandler movie?
No, I heard
good.
Muscle
it was
was excellent.
I heard it was
really
good.
good.
I heard it was good. So if not, give us some other names that the Cavs might be targeting, guys that we may end up see with that first-round pick.
So speaking of foreign players, there's a kid, Ousmane Dieng. He's from France, 6'10". He's more of a guard than a big. Now, if you look at his numbers, you're going to be surprised. The numbers look really, really bad. He got off to a really, really slow start. But in the second half of the season, which he played in Australia, in the second half of the season, he ended up turning it on. And I think he could end up going where he was projected to go before the season started. He was a projected lottery pick. And then, like I said, the numbers were bad. But I spent this whole entire basketball season overseas scouting the international prospects.
Wow.
I have a good handle on the overseas players. And one of the things with Dieng, when you look at the numbers, and just to put it in context, he's an 18-year-old kid that's from France, but he spent the season in Australia, and Australia had really strict COVID restrictions. So he was there by himself. So that's a huge adjustment for a kid to be. Think about an American kid going to college, and he may struggle. And now you factor in that he's going to a different country, language barrier, and I think that played a major role in his early season struggles. But he made up for it in the second half of the season.
You've put in the work, Rafael.
Damn.
You've logged some miles for
22
this.
countries.
Yeah, man, I love this. Like, if I won $1 gazillion today, my life wouldn't change. I enjoy watching basketball, traveling, so I'm having fun with this.
Cool. That's awesome. It really is.
I'm trying to
If
think.
I want $1 gazillion,
I
I'd
mean,
start smoking crack, I think.
who paying you? This is
kidding, I
crazy,
wouldn't
man. He
smoke.
got Spain, Italy,
Yeah.
everywhere.
Hey.
You jet
Australia.
setting. That's crazy.
Believe it or not, it's not as expensive as it sounds. It's expensive here in America. So
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me about it.
It's
Good point.
Talk
not
that
as
talk.
expensive as it sounds.
Yeah. Well, listen, we're glad that you spent some time with us. We appreciate it. Rafael Barlowe, he's a draft guru. You saw his resume. The guy's put in the work.
Nice.
And his word should mean something because he's seen a lot of these guys in person. So even if the tape is faked, you're going to know it. You can tell who can play and who can't. Rafael, come talk to us after the draft so we can figure out how we did, okay?
Yes.
All right, anytime you want me on, let me know. I can make it happen.
I
Thanks,
love it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thanks for the insight,
we appreciate
man.
it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you know what? The guy is a craftsman. He puts a
22
lot of effort and
countries.
energy into doing his job, and you got to respect that.
He
Good
is also
resource.
Locked On's NBA draft guru and host.
For
They're gonna
all
have
of
a
Locked
whole,
On, right?
Yep, they're gonna have a whole Locked On NBA draft
Yeah.
special with live reaction and stuff like that. So we work with Locked On very frequently.
Yes.
We're gonna have Chris Manning of Locked On Cavs on Thursday. So
Locked
we
On's
just wanna make
NFL
sure-
draft special was fantastic.